I don't know exactly what draws me to the water. Maybe it's the silence you can only find deep below the surface. Maybe it's that feeling of total control over every movement. Because underwater, you can't rush. Or maybe it's just that down there, I truly feel alive. My name is Jake. I'm 40 years old, and I work as a diver for a private company that specializes in underwater operations. Everything from inspecting sunken vessels to searching for lost objects and even supporting archaeological expeditions. It's not a job, it's a way of life. We don't have offices. Our desks are yachts, piers, shipping containers full of gear. Our workplace starts where the sunlight ends. Every morning, I'm up at 5:30. While the rest of the city is just waking, I'm already checking my gear. Tanks, mask, breathing regulator, wetsuit. In this line of work, everything has to be in perfect order. No compromises. A single mistake, and you're gone. My partner Grayson is a former military man. Calm, a little grim, but when he laughs, it's contagious like a kid's giggle. We've been through a lot together. Installing cables for underwater systems, recovering valuable cargo from wrecked boats, even assisting in an investigation involving a sunken speedboat. Sometimes, our work feels like something out of a movie. Other times, it's just hours of searching for a needle in the ocean's haystack. Occasionally, we get calls from private individuals. Someone dropped their wedding ring off a yacht. Someone else lost a drone, or a treasured knife that belonged to their grandfather. These jobs aren't always profitable, but if the story catches me, I go. I can't explain it. I guess we just like helping people. But one day, I got a call from a woman whose voice I'll never forget. There was something about it, subtle, but unmistakable. And I didn't yet know that this job would become one of the most moving and unexpected experiences of my career. The next morning, just after my first cup of coffee and a quick gear check, I got a call that immediately stood out from the usual routine. A woman. Her voice sounded like she was in her early 30s, confident, but with a barely noticeable tremble in her tone. You know the kind of voice someone has when they're holding it together, but there's a storm just under the surface. Mr. Hawkins? Are you the one who does underwater recovery? Yes, I replied. Private company. Blue Current Diving. What do you need help with? My husband and I rented a yacht yesterday. It was his birthday. We invited some friends, had a great time, swimming, diving, but I dropped something really important overboard. We marked the coordinates. I think it's down there. I want to hire you. Just for a day, or as long as it takes. Her voice picked up speed, as if she were afraid I'd hang up before she finished explaining. What exactly did you lose? I asked gently. Just so you're aware, diving for small items can get expensive, especially if visibility is poor or the object is tiny. It's a copper bracelet, she said. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. It doesn't have any real value. Not financially, but it's a family heirloom. It's been passed down from mother to daughter in our family for over 200 years. My great-grandmother wore it. Then my grandmother. Then my mother. Now me. Without it, I feel like I've lost a part of who I am. We'll pay whatever it takes. Just please, help me try. I was quiet for a moment. You get all kinds of clients in this business. People who lose wedding rings during drunken boat parties, and they want you to find it before their spouse finds out. But this was different. She spoke like it wasn't just about the bracelet. It was about something much deeper. You have the coordinates? I asked. Yes. I can send them now. We're ready to go back out today if you are. All right, I said, already pulling out a chart of the coastline. Just the two of you? Yes. Me, my husband, and you, if you're willing. No one else. We've got everything ready. I hung up and sat in silence for a few seconds. On paper, it was just another private job. Find a lost copper bracelet, probably already buried in sand or tangled in seaweed. But there was a certainty in her voice, a faith, that made it impossible for me to say no. We agreed to meet the next day at a small private marina. While I packed my gear, Grayson walked over. Another underwater treasure hunt. He smirked, noticing the unusual care I was taking with my setup. You know how I get about this kind of thing, I shrugged. It's not about the money. He nodded. We understood each other without needing to say much. In this job, it's not just about metal or lost valuables. Sometimes it's about memory, about pain, about things that can't be measured in dollars. When I arrived at the marina, she was already there. Early 30s, athletic build, hair pulled up into a high ponytail. Next to her stood a tall man in dark sunglasses. Her husband, I assumed. He had the look of someone who'd decided to stay out of the way but would be supportive regardless. "Jake?" she asked. "That's me. And you are?" "Sarah," she said, extending her hand. "And this is my husband, Tom." We shook hands. She wasn't teary or dramatic, just focused, determined. "Here are the coordinates," she said, handing me a printout with GPS data and a rough sketch of the area. I marked the spot on my phone as soon as it happened. "I'm sure this is where it fell." "All right. Depth's not too bad. With luck, we might actually get it done today." We loaded up the boat and headed out. Tom stayed quiet during the trip, while Sarah kept her eyes on the horizon. Only once, as I glanced away from the throttle, did our eyes meet. Hers were steady, not panicked, just full of quiet urgency. She truly believed the bracelet could be recovered. "I know the chances are slim," she said softly, "but I have to try. I can't just walk away from this. It feels like losing my entire bloodline, like betraying the women who came before me." I nodded. I understood. Sometimes a thing becomes an anchor for the soul, and until you find it again, you don't feel whole. When we reached the location, the sea was calm. The sun was starting to dip, casting soft amber light across the water. I began checking my gear, tank, mask, flashlight, metal detector. And right then and there, I realized I wanted to find that bracelet. Not for money, not for the success of a clean job, but for her. For that quiet hope she carried like a flame cupped in her hands. For the belief that some things, when lost, can still be brought back. When you've been a diver for a while, you learn one critical skill: how to shut off your emotions the moment you slip beneath the surface. Underwater, you can't afford panic, hesitation, or even too much excitement. Every breath, every motion has to be deliberate and calm. But as we arrived at the GPS-marked spot Sarah had shown me, I could already feel that today wouldn't be business as usual. The area was beautiful in a rugged, natural way. A rocky outcrop sloped into the water, with a small reef off to the side. The seabed below was sandy and scattered with stones, about 30 feet deep, not too bad. A decent spot for swimming, and considering there were no strong currents, it could have been worse for searching. While I was prepping my gear, oxygen tank, buoyancy compensator, underwater flashlight, and a compact metal detector, Sarah and Tom were talking quietly. I didn't listen in. Conversations like those are usually tense, hope wrestling with realism, silently preparing for disappointment. Then Tom slapped his knees and stood up suddenly. "I'm going in with you." "You don't have a tank," I said, raising an eyebrow. "No wetsuit either." "I've got fins and a mask," he declared proudly. "I was in the army, remember?" "Tom, seriously?" Sarah said with a slight shake of her head, but without malice. She seemed used to his antics. Tom leapt overboard with a noisy splash and started diving in spurts, barely staying underwater longer than 10 seconds at a time. He looked like an overgrown sea lion, flailing and grunting, coming up with dramatic gasps and exaggerated confidence. I smiled, pulled down my mask, checked the regulator and tank pressure, turned on the flashlight and metal detector, and stepped off the boat. The first thing I felt was quiet. The second, emptiness. The water was crystal clear. Sunlight streamed all the way to the bottom, casting golden patterns across the sand and rocks. It looked deceptively easy. The seabed was visible in every direction, but I knew better. A copper bracelet wouldn't stand out like gold or silver. It could blend right into the surroundings, especially if it landed edge first or had already shifted slightly from the fall. I started near the rocky slope. Stones, patches of coral, and seaweed all cluttered the terrain. I moved slowly, scanning with the detector in one hand, sweeping with the flashlight in the other, though the light was barely needed in this clarity. Every square meter felt like a universe of its own. Time underwater moves differently, it stretches. After about 15 minutes, I surfaced for a breather. Tom was already back on the boat, coughing and spitting water. "How's it going?" he asked, trying to wring out a shirt. "Better stick to guarding the boat," I said, pulling myself back aboard to swap tanks. Sarah handed me a towel. She didn't speak, but her eyes asked the question. I just shook my head. Not yet. I didn't wait long. Back in the water, I shifted direction and swam toward the reef. This area was busier, schools of small fish darted between outcrops, and a curious moray eel peeked out from beneath a ledge. It reminded me again that the ocean isn't just a body of water, it's another world. Alive. Teeming with secrets. I covered the zone section by section, alert to the slightest shimmer or glint. But all I found was more junk, beer tabs, broken plastic, even a discarded swim fin. My hands brushed over every ridge, lifted every stone. Still nothing. An hour passed before I surfaced again. Any luck? Sarah asked. I only shook my head. Still got some daylight left, I said. I'm not giving up yet. I took a short break, tuna sandwich, water, a few almonds. Tom cracked open another beer. Sarah didn't eat. She just stared out to sea, as if trying to remember the exact moment the bracelet slipped off her wrist and vanished. I went back down. This time, I headed toward a narrow trench between the rocks. A trickier area, more coral, sharper edges, tighter spaces. I crawled through it like a crab, carefully illuminating every crevice. The detector beeped a few times, but it was always the same story. Bottle caps, rusty nails, old can lids. The ocean keeps garbage better than it keeps heirlooms. My oxygen was getting low, so I surfaced again. Swapped tanks. By now, the sun was dipping lower, and the water was growing dimmer. I had time for one last search before I'd have to call it. This time, I circled the boat itself. Maybe, just maybe, the bracelet had floated or been kicked closer to the hull. But the area was just as empty. Sea cucumbers, crusted bottle caps, and a single plastic earring were all I found. I surfaced one final time, pulled off my mask, and lay on my back in the water, staring up at the sky. Jake. Sarah called softly. Nothing, I said. Still nothing. She didn't cry. Didn't panic. She just nodded. I'd like to pay for one more day, she said quietly. Please. I looked at her. And despite the exhaustion, I couldn't say no. The second day began under a blanket of dull gray clouds. The sky felt low, like it was pressing gently down on the water. The sunlight was muted, filtered through the overcast morning, and the sea had turned a darker shade of steel blue. There was no wind, no drama, just a still, heavy quiet. I arrived at the marina early habit. While checking my gear, I realized that this copper bracelet had occupied far more of my mind than it should have. Sarah and Tom pulled up about 10 minutes later. She looked much the same as the day before, practical clothes, hair up, that sharp, calm focus in her eyes. Tom was sipping from a thermos, carrying a fresh snorkel mask like he had something to prove today. Morning, he said. Sky's different, I replied, glancing up. As long as it's not storming, we're good, Sarah said simply. We loaded up the boat and returned to the same coordinates. The ride was quiet, peaceful even. No one said much, and I appreciated it. There was something about that thick marine air and the heavy grayness that felt sacred. But the water didn't welcome us the way it had the day before. As soon as I went under, I saw the difference. Visibility had dropped. The clear glassy world from yesterday was gone. Now everything was cloudy, stirred up. Light struggled to reach the bottom. The metal detector was now reacting to everything, fragments of old gear, sunken trash, corroded bolts, most of it meaningless. I had to rely more on my flashlight and my instincts. I went back to the same area I'd searched on day one. I knew the terrain now, where the ledges were, how the rocks layered, where the coral formed natural bowls. I moved slowly, lifting stones, brushing away silt, pushing aside seaweed. But again and again, all I found were pieces of someone else's past, a rusted chain, a hairpin, a tangled mess of fishing line. After about an hour, I surfaced. Tom handed me a towel. Sarah didn't speak. She sat with her knees pulled in, arms wrapped around them, staring down into the water. Find anything? Tom asked. Just a Corona bottle cap. Sarah didn't laugh, but her lips twitched slightly. A tiny, tired smile. It was the only hint of humor we'd had all morning. I switched tanks and dropped back in. This time, I decided to explore past the reef. Yesterday, I hadn't gotten that far. This section of the seafloor was rougher, more stone than sand, with deeper crevices and pockets where something could easily get wedged and hidden. I moved with extreme caution. One bad move in there, and you could wedge yourself in or slice through a suit. My flashlight cut through the gloom in sharp yellow beams. I thought I saw glints here and there, but they were just fish scales, rock crystals, illusions. By midday, fatigue was setting in. Not the muscle kind, though that was there too, but a creeping mental exhaustion. Underwater, with nothing but your breath and the occasional beep of a tool, your thoughts get louder. And when you come up empty again and again, hope starts to stretch thin. Not broken, just strained. I surfaced and climbed back aboard. Tom was chewing on something from a plastic container. I went for a protein bar. Sarah just sat there, not eating, not blinking. Her eyes were on the horizon. Do you still believe it's out here? Tom asked her quietly. She didn't turn. It has to be. I remember the moment it slipped off. It happened here. I felt it. She paused, her voice still calm. Maybe we're just not looking the right way. That hit me harder than it should have. I went back down. This time I scanned the area immediately beneath the boat. It seemed pointless. Surely I'd already swept this zone. But something in me said, don't assume. Maybe we overlooked something. I combed through the area inch by inch. Hands in the sand. Flashlight into every crevice. Metal detector on low sensitivity mode. It beeped a few times, tiny hits. Most were trash again. Once, a tiny copper button. Almost exciting, but not a bracelet. I surfaced around 4 p.m. Light was fading. Underwater, it was already dusk. I made one final descent, not hoping, not expecting, just finishing the promise. That last dive was almost silent inside my mind. No inner dialogue, no narration. Just breath. Slow, controlled. I checked the final quadrant near the reef's edge, then glided slowly back to the anchor line. Still nothing. When I came up and pulled off my mask, there was a quiet stillness in the boat. Tom sat with his hands resting on his knees. Sarah traced slow circles with her fingers on her wrist, right where the bracelet used to sit. That's it, I said. Tanks are empty. And so is the light. I understand, she said softly. But what surprised me most, she didn't look crushed. She looked tired, yes. But something inside her remained untouched. Still upright. Thank you, Jake, she said. I know you tried. I saw it. That means a lot. Some things just stay lost, I said. And some come back when they're ready. On the way back, no one talked. Tom dozed off. I just stared at the water. But Sarah, she kept her eyes fixed on the horizon. Like she was listening. Waiting. When I got home, I cleaned my gear. Rinsed the regulator, hung the wetsuit to dry. Then I sat in front of the TV and let the moving images wash over me without meaning. And then, the phone rang. The phone rang so loudly it startled me, even though the room was quiet and still. I hadn't been sleeping. Just sitting on the edge of the couch, eyes glazed over, watching some infomercial drone on in the background. My body was there, but my mind was still underwater, somewhere near that reef, scanning, sweeping, listening for a sound that never came. The caller ID showed an unknown number. For a second, I debated whether to answer. Then instinct kicked in, and I picked up. Hello? Jake. A woman's voice burst through the speaker. Breathless, loud, trembling, but not with panic. With joy. Jake. We found it. Oh my God. We found it. I froze. Sarah. Yes. It's me. They found it. She was laughing and crying at the same time. The owner of the yacht just called. One of his crew was cleaning the boat, tidying up under the stairs that lead down into the cabin, and he saw something shiny wedged in a crack. He pulled it out. Jake. It's my bracelet. It was there the whole time. I slumped back into the couch, exhaling hard. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I just listened to the raw, unfiltered happiness in her voice. On the boat. I asked. It was never in the water? No. It must have slipped off my wrist when I was stepping down the stairs after swimming. It fell between two wooden planks and just stuck there. I'm holding it right now. It's a little scratched, but it's here. It's safe. I closed my eyes and smiled. All those hours. All those dives. And the bracelet had been only feet away, hidden in a shadowy gap beneath the very place we'd stood. I wanted you to be the first to know, she said, her voice gentler now. You gave us your time. You gave me hope. Even when we didn't find it, you were still there. Well, I chuckled. Technically, I didn't do anything. Jake, she said, suddenly serious. Yes, you did. You dove with everything you had. You gave me 2 days of believing it might still be possible. And maybe that's what made this happen. There was a pause. A comfortable silence. Neither of us rushed to fill it. Tom says the bracelet got scared of all the diving and came crawling back out, she said with a laugh. Sounds like Tom, I replied. Tell him next time I lose something, I want him on my team. He'll love that, she said. Though he still thinks he found it himself by inspiring the boat to confess. She laughed again, warm and honest, and I felt the tension I'd been carrying for 2 days lift completely. I really mean it, Jake, she added. This wasn't just a job. This was family. Legacy. You were part of something bigger than you knew. Well, I said, staring out the dark window, I guess we all want to believe that what we do matters. It does, she replied. It did. We hung up not long after. I stayed on the couch, staring at the phone, listening to the faint buzz of the TV. But I wasn't watching anymore. I thought about the dives, the long moments of silence under the surface, the glint of light on rocks that turned out to be nothing. I thought about Sarah sitting on the boat, her hands wrapped around her knees, staring into the horizon like she was talking to someone I couldn't see. And then I thought about the bracelet, how it waited, how it had been there all along, how, in the end, it didn't need to be found by me, only to be returned to the hands that still believed in it. Sometimes, we don't need to be the hero. Sometimes, it's enough just to show up, to try, to give someone the space to hope when they've got nothing else left to hold on to. Sarah found her bracelet, and I found something too, though I couldn't quite name it. But I knew one thing for sure, I wouldn't forget this job. I woke up early the next morning, the kind of early that feels like the world hasn't quite started turning yet. A soft gray light spilled through the bedroom window, and I sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on knees, staring at the floor like I was waiting for yesterday to come back and confirm itself. The bracelet had been found, not on the ocean floor, not tangled in kelp or buried in sand. It had been sitting under a set of wooden steps on a rented yacht, quiet, still, hidden in plain sight. After all the diving, the searching, the strained hope, it had never left the boat. I ran a hand over my face and got up. The kettle hummed while I stood by the window, letting the soft steam from my mug of tea fog the glass. I didn't turn on the TV or check the news. I just let the silence wrap around me. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was reflective. Whole. My phone buzzed with a message. Sarah, we're heading over to pick it up now. They left it at the marina office. Want to come say goodbye? I stared at the message for a few seconds, then typed back, of course. Be there in an hour. When I arrived, they were already there. Sarah was standing beside their car, holding a small velvet box in both hands like it was made of glass. Tom leaned against the hood, sipping coffee from a travel mug. I walked up, and he greeted me with a grin. Well, there's our champion diver, he said. Too bad you never got the glory shot of pulling it out of the water, huh? I shrugged. To be honest, I've had worse endings. And this one feels right. Sarah walked over, opened the box, and showed me the bracelet. It was simple, just a worn copper band with delicate engravings of vines and leaves along the edge. No gemstones, no clasp, just age, time, and memory wrapped into one small circle. This bracelet, she said softly, was on my great-grandmother's wrist when she arrived in America. She wore it when she married, when she buried her parents. My grandmother wore it on the day my mom was born. And now, it's back with me. I nodded slowly. There wasn't much to say. Some moments aren't for commentary. They're just meant to be witnessed. I thought I was okay with losing it, she continued. That night, after we left the boat empty-handed, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I told myself I'd accepted it. But when I got that call last night, I sobbed like a child. I realized hope had been living somewhere deeper inside me than I knew. Sometimes hope breathes for us when we forget how to. I said before I could stop myself. Tom snorted. Okay, poets. Let's not turn this into a memoir just yet. Sarah rolled her eyes and laughed. Then she turned to me again. You really don't want to be paid for the third day? I shook my head. I didn't find the bracelet. I didn't even know it was still on the boat. But you were with us, she said. You stayed. You dove. You gave us hope. That's worth something. I exhaled, glanced out at the water, and smiled. All right, I said. On one condition. What's that? Next time you lose something, check the stairs first. She burst out laughing. Not politely. Fully, openly, with her head tilted back and hands on her chest. It was a beautiful sound. The kind of laugh that carries something away with it. The last wait. The final worry. We talked a bit more. Tom told some ridiculous story about losing his wedding ring in a tub of ice cream once. Sarah teased him for checking the freezer before checking his pockets. I just listened, content to let the moment stretch a little longer. Eventually, they left. I stood there on the dock, watching their car disappear around the bend. Then I turned back to the marina, took a deep breath of sea air, and looked out over the water. The tide was going out. Seagulls wheeled lazily overhead. The surface of the bay shimmered, gentle and quiet. This job would stay with me. Not because I found anything, but because I didn't. And yet, somehow, something was returned anyway. It wasn't about the bracelet. Not really. It was about legacy, memory, family. About the invisible threads that tie people to their past, and the belief that those threads can be found again, even when they feel hopelessly lost. Sometimes we think we're searching for things, but really, we're searching for proof. Proof that the past hasn't left us, that the people we come from still matter, That if we try, if we show up and give our best and care deeply, something will answer. And when it does, it might just look like an old copper bracelet in the hands of someone who never stopped believing.